Good morning, Dawg Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro. This is going to be a fun show because we're getting ready for a gigantic game on Saturday for Georgia against Ole Miss, and Kirby Smart has a specific challenge for Georgia fans. We're going to talk over the course of the next few minutes a couple of different reasons why Georgia fans need to be ready to meet the challenge that Kirby Smart has issued here this week. Why it matters this week in particular, why it's important, we'll give that to you. Also, two very special guests today. On Tuesdays, you've come to expect Jake Fromm. That continues today. Jake had a lot of things to say about Georgia's win against Auburn on Saturday and where the Dogs need to go from here on that. And also, a more rare special guest, the former Georgia coach, Mark Richt, going to join us here today. Obviously, we're getting excited about next week and the return of the Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl, DawgNation's involvement with that for a third straight year. So Coach Richt will talk about that. He'll share his own thoughts on Georgia's win against Auburn and also his own history of getting lots of wins against Auburn throughout the years. That is going to come up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have that for you here in just a couple of minutes. But off the top, in a week that's already pretty hard for Kirby Smart, just given the slings and arrows that he's taking, one of his good friends also took a jab at him, too, ahead of their game on Saturday. Wait till you hear what Lane Kiffin said about Kirby Smart. It sets us up for a conversation about Georgia and Ole Miss, the big game on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Loaded show. Glad you're here. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by ServPro. Cleaning, restoration, construction.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Absolutely massive guest on today's show, totally befitting of a big game week for UGA, the biggest game in town, with Ole Miss in town on Saturday. Before we're done, it's Jake Fromm. It's also the former Georgia coach, Mark Richt, a part of the show today. So we're happy to have two really well-known names, two great guests, leading into what's going to be a gigantic game for Georgia on Saturday as it gets ready to host Ole Miss. And obviously both Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin are going to have a lot to say about this game this week. It is funny to me that one of the first things that Lane Kiffin chose to say about it was not anything about the Georgia team or his team, but his good friend Kirby Smart kind of poking at him a little bit, jabbing at him a little bit. I thought this was funny. Maybe it sets the tone for the week. Obviously, it makes it seem like Lane Kiffin is pretty relaxed. Kiffin was asked a question, and he used it to poke a little bit of fun at his good friend Kirby Smart. Let me let you hear this right now.
Off the wall question, you and Kirby, probably some of the more demonstrative coaches on the field. Who do you think burns more calories in a game, you or him?
I don't know. That's a good question. I walked by the TV and saw his press conference today, so it don't look like he's burned too many calories. But he does have a lot of energy in the games, and he coaches really passionate. And I've given him heat before about the weight loss part. He says he's too stressed to work out.
So let me just say this. The delivery on that, like the joke itself is probably a C+, right? The delivery on that is an A+. And weirdly, coaches, Kirby's this way, I think, to a certain extent. Lane Kiffin, very much that way right there. Others in the same mold. Nick Saban on TV is proving to be this way some. Their sarcastic, deadpan delivery gives them a chance for the joke to land in a way the average person just kind of doesn't. And it is kind of an off-the-wall question, but the fact that Kiffin immediately pivots to a joke that, like I said, not the most creative joke of all time, but it does land. I mean, credit to Kiffin for how he tells the joke there on that. And listen, to my eyes, certainly not compared to me anyway, I don't think of Kirby Smart as being overweight. I will say, though, that we probably, those of us who are men, we all need that one friend in our life who will tell us that we're fat, even if we're not. It's probably good for us to have that. I think it kind of helps us keep us honest and, just sort of helps us keep us in the frame that we're supposed to be, frame of mind that we're supposed to be. So if Kiffin is Kirby's friend like that, all men need their friend like that. Maybe that's the role that Lane functions in Kirby Smart's life. I also think it's funny that this comes during a week in which Kirby's already taken a lot of heat. All of a sudden, now you got Kiffin in a press conference making fun of his weight. saying he didn't have time to work out. Given the fact that Kirby's getting all kinds of criticism all over the place. What we have, Sean McDonough yesterday, dramatic during the game. He can't keep getting away with this. It's just like making Kirby out to be public enemy number one for whatever happened with the timeout and everything else that's going on. Kirby's taking a lot of criticism this week, and now you got Kiffin piling on him about his weight. That seems a little excessive, but nonetheless, it's all part of the mood that goes into Saturday's game. In fact, Hugh Freeze, the Auburn coach, he's still talking about all of this. He was in his press conference yesterday and still talking about his grievances and complaints and all of the stuff that he's filling up the inboxes with when it comes to the SEC offices. He literally won't let this go, which is part of the reason why, Kirby Smart's been dealing with so much national media type grief this week. And in fact, just for fun, this doesn't really matter. Georgia's turning the page, but just for fun, can we go back and hear Hugh Freeze just still beside himself and just looking for someone to listen to his complaints? This is from yesterday.
Yeah, I was on the phone quite a bit this weekend and had a conversation with Commissioner Sankey and with the Director of Officials, John McDade, and expressed how I felt. They listened. Obviously, they want their group to get it right all the time, and it's just there was some that did not get right, in my opinion, and they can disagree with me. They can, but it was it's hurting our football team, and it's hurt, in my opinion, our record.
Let me just say three things real quick in response to Hugh Freeze's statement from yesterday. Thing number one is he says the calls that he believes are going against him are hurting his record. I'll tell you what, Hugh, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a touchdown. The touchdown that incorrectly you think you deserved in the first half, you get that touchdown now. There you go. You get it. You still lose 20-17, so your overall record this season is still, at least as it relates to the Georgia game, is the same as it would be. Now, whatever happened between you and Oklahoma, frankly, that's for y'all to figure out. That doesn't involve me. But in the case of the Georgia game, because I'm magnanimous, I'll give you a touchdown. There you go. And by the way, if you had Auburn plus the 3.5, maybe you can take that to your local bookie and see if he'll give you something for it. But I'll give you the touchdown. You now lost the game 20-17 as opposed to 20-10, because I don't know if you know this, but it has maybe been brought to your attention that after the fumble by Jackson Arnold, your team didn't do anything the rest of the game. So I'm going to gift you the touchdown you don't deserve, and now you can say you lost 20-17, but your overall win-loss record would be the same. But two other things real quick, and then we're going to move on. Thing number one is this, and this is hopefully the role that I function in as the host of DawgNation Daily. I notice things that are not always apparent unless you really listen carefully. I want you to listen carefully to a couple of things that Hugh Freeze says there, because I think they're really, really demonstrative of the overall situation. Freeze at the beginning of that clip says, I was on the phone a lot, but he also says, I had one conversation. So Freeze says, I was on the phone a lot and had a conversation with Greg Sankey. Let me interpret that for you. What he means is he got sent to voicemail a ton, and then Greg Sankey finally picked up the phone. Oh, gosh, it's Hugh Freeze calling again. What does he want? I'll send that to voicemail. I'm busy right now. I'm having brunch or whatever it is that SEC commissioners do on a late Sunday morning. Oh, gosh, here's Hugh Freeze again. I don't want to talk to him right now. Freeze says, I was on the phone a lot, and I had a conversation. That means he got sent to voicemail over and over and over again. They finally picked up the phone. The rules official, whoever that is, and Greg Sankey, they let Freeze have his piece. But in Freeze's own admission in that clip we just heard, while he feels wronged and he feels like he deserves some sort of restitution for all of this, the fact of the matter is, according to Freeze's own telling, and you heard him say this, according to Freeze's own telling of this, the SEC officials just didn't agree. They just didn't agree. That he feels like he got it wrong, that he was wrong and something was horrible and there was this miscarriage of justice. But according to Freeze's own telling, the SEC officials are like, you know what, file a complaint. There's nothing we're going to do here. We are moving on. Because while Freeze was on the phone a lot, as Kirby Smart said yesterday, when it comes to the alleged timeout and whatever else that people are trying to conjure up when it relates to drama this and drama that, while Freeze is trying to get anybody to pick up the phone, Kirby Smart has said he's had no conversations at all. This matters. This is Kirby from yesterday.
From the Auburn game, the timeout being waived off thing has become a thing. Have you talked to the SEC about that, and have you watched the film to kind of see that, like, it does appear that you are calling timeout? Did you even not realize you were, or what?
I talked to no one, the SEC office-wise, and I stand by what I talked about after the game. Worried about Ole Miss.
Worried about Ole Miss, indeed. The SEC is also in so many ways telling Hugh Freeze, hey, be worried about whatever you have coming up next, too. Auburn, you lost. It's over. Everybody's moving on. But just for fun, I couldn't help but notice the Super Bowl winning coach John Gruden, who now works for Barstool Sports, in, what is it, Wake Up Barstool, the new show that's on FS1, whatever else. The topic came up, and this is going to drive Auburn fans batty, even though I think Gruden's mostly joking. In light of what went on here, all of a sudden now the dust is settling. This, oh my gosh, Kirby Smart can't get away with this. Like the super serious, heavy-handed treatment of this on Saturday night, it's now turning into a big joke, the same way the Auburn program has been a joke for most of this century. So much so that John Gruden on TV this week, the Super Bowl winning coach, basically just shrugged the whole thing off. This was Gruden with Barstool on FS1 this week.
Hey, Merry Christmas. He changed his mind. Give the guy a break. I've had it several times where I've taken a timeout and an official says, are you sure you want that timeout? And I said, no, I guess I don't. I mean, we are allowed to make a mistake once in a while and see if we can change our mind. Fortunately for the referee, for Georgia, they gave Kirby Smart a mulligan. But I was at Georgia, Dave. Me and Malisack were at Georgia watching them practice. As far as I'm concerned, nobody should criticize Kirby Smart. He is the baddest dude in college football. He runs the best practices. Oh, I love Kirby Smart. As far as I'm concerned, he can do whatever he wants.
Look, this is an important lesson learned in life, and it doesn't seem fair, but it's true. Winners write the history. And Georgia won, and so therefore people line up behind the winner. I know it seemed like Auburn had the emotion on their side on Saturday, and all these non-Georgia fans, Georgia haters in many ways, were finally taking up the cause of Auburn because somebody needs to give Georgia what they deserve. Well, guess what? Dust settled. Auburn lost. Everybody's moving on, and now it's a big joke. Everybody laughing at Auburn the way they always do. And by the way, I'll give you one more on this just real quick. Even when the dust settles on all of this and people have time to properly consider what went on, level-headed, objective people not inside the bubble of Dawg Nation, are now starting to say basically what we exactly said on yesterday's show. For instance, do you know who Terry McAuley is? If you watch NBC Football Night in America or Amazon's Thursday night game, the biggest games on TV for the most part, you perhaps have seen McAuley on there as the rules analyst who they turn to, and there's a question about the rules. He also puts his opinions out on the X platform, and he put a post yesterday correcting his initial opinion of the Georgia-Auburn game, where initially he thought, like a lot of people, including the mistaken rules analyst on TV Saturday night, that the Auburn touchdown at the end of the first half should have counted. McAuley coming back to say that upheld was the correct replay ruling, and he cites his reason for feeling that way. So even now, objective rules analysts, among the most famous in America, those who appear on the biggest television broadcast, are now saying, you know what, dust is cleared, everything is settled. I think the officials probably did get it right, because here's what we know. It definitely was a fumble. It might have also been a touchdown. But in the battle of definitely was versus might have also been just has a higher burden of proof. And there was no burden of proof satisfied for that. It was a fumble correctly adjudicated by the officials there. Even Terry McAuley said so himself on X yesterday, the famous rules analyst that you've no doubt seen on television. So all of that is simply a setup to say this. Lane Kiffin's joking about Kirby Smart, but the other stuff you've heard about Kirby Smart this week has not been a joke. It has been legitimate criticism, haters revealing their true selves. I mean, you really come to conclude that there are a lot of people that really don't like Georgia, and they're just looking to reverse engineer and come up with a good reason why. And the game for Georgia against Auburn, for many people, felt like that good reason why. So for those of us who are Georgia fans, especially if you happen to be one of the lucky few that hold a ticket for Saturday's game, here's the question I think all of that leads us to. What are we, the Georgia fans, going to do about all the criticism, even if it's now become a joke, and it mostly has because that's where Auburn was always headed, back to the punchline status. What do we do about this? What do we do about all the people, whether it be serious media person, broadcaster on the game, random fan on social media? What do you do about the fact that so many people seem to have just the knives out for Georgia right now and just seem ready to just criticize Georgia and Kirby Smart in particular for every little thing? Well, as we move into discussion about the Ole Miss game on Saturday, here is what I hope that Georgia fans will do. I hope they will use this as a chance to circle the wagons. You know, going back to last week, we talked about the needed energy reboot and, hey, let's make a villain out of Jesse Palmer. And a lot of y'all are still having a good time with that. And I love to see it. But this also can be its own version of an energy reboot because, listen, in the first half of this game, it was the Georgia fans themselves who were criticizing Georgia. We're not going to pretend that they weren't. Of course, that's the case. Georgia was not playing well. But then Georgia somehow, some way, figures it out, doing what it does, never quits, showing resiliency, just somehow finding a way, which is in its own way pretty amazing and pretty miraculous. And all of a sudden your team escapes with a win. And you, even if you didn't love the way that Georgia played, you still feel good about the fact that they escaped with a win. And then you spend all day Sunday, if you were on your phone and doing stuff like that. I mean, Georgia's getting criticism everywhere they turn. Kirby Smart's getting criticism. People are impugning his character and his like it's as intense and personal as the criticism is ever going to be. So the response from Georgia fans, I hope, is circling the wagons to say, this is the moment when we come together. We can argue over what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be better. We can do that anytime. But for now, we got to be a united front because for now, we have an external enemy that is coming after us and they're criticizing us. And Saturday against Ole Miss is a great place for Georgia fans to show just how much they can circle the wagons and unite together and, frankly, get a do-over at the big home game that honestly, admittedly, did not go the way it was supposed to against Alabama. No one's disputing that. Kirby Smart himself would not dispute that. But now you get a do-over. Game days in Athens on Saturday. It's the big game in the country. Lane Kiffin's a big-time coach. Ole Miss is the number 5 program in America. Ole Miss is ranked higher in this game than Georgia is. Y'all, this is a big game. It just so happens that Georgia plays a lot of big games these days. But in and of itself, Ole Miss coming to Athens on Saturday is a big game. And as Kirby Smart said this week, it needs to be a big environment. And my hope is, given what Kirby's enduring this week, the criticism, some of it may be legitimate, some of it totally overblown, all of it dramatic, maybe Georgia fans will see fit to give Kirby what he asks for. This is Kirby from yesterday.
We need the best atmosphere we've ever had in Sanford Stadium. You know, I got a lot of respect for Lane. He does an incredible job. Probably one of the best things he does is in-game coaching, having coached with him and watched him for years. His impact on the quarterback and the offensive play and ability to communicate with the quarterback, whether it's by headset or by sideline, he does a great job of getting the quarterback's attention and getting them in the right plays based on looks. Probably better than anybody else in the country. He and his staff do that. I won't give him all the credit, but he does an unbelievable job, and we need to make that extremely difficult. So the issue and the challenge has been issued for our fan base to be extremely difficult for them to communicate and do things offensively that they do, especially at home, and sometimes on the road when it's not the right environment.
So let me read between the lines on this. A minute ago, I read between the lines on a Hugh Freeze comment. Let me read between the lines on a Kirby Smart comment. The part you didn't hear there because we simply didn't have time to play it. Before going into the challenge for Georgia fans against Ole Miss, Kirby was very complimentary of the Georgia fans who went to Auburn, saying, boy, they were packed in that end zone, really appreciate what they did, blah, blah, blah. As someone who was there, and I'm not meaning this in any way critical, I'm just pointing this out, there was not an abnormally large number of Georgia fans in that end zone section for this game. This was not a DawgNation invasion style takeover. There weren't 20,000 Georgia fans in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It was just, I would say, and this is not disrespecting Georgia or anything. This is not meant to be negative. My point is, it was not an unusually loud or unusually large contingent of Georgia fans. But Kirby Smart saw fit to compliment Georgia fans anyway. To me, what this is a little bit of an acknowledgement of, hey, I know this is a tense time. I know we lost Alabama. I know people are concerned in some respects about our team. I get that the season is long and the mood is a little weird right now. I'm obviously reading a lot into this, but that's what I sort of take that to mean of, hey, boy, we appreciate what you did for us at Auburn. This isn't in so many ways is about Kirby Smart pumping up the fans to now ask for them to do this again because he just asked for this a couple of weeks ago and it didn't quite work out. Smart is very aware of stuff like that. He's just very with it when it comes to, power dynamics and what he asks for and whether or not he can get it and making sure he looks strong. Kirby gets that some fans are disappointed, even though Georgia's still very much in the college football playoff race. And so he starts with a positive to come back and say, we need you. We need you on Saturday. And if you're lucky enough to be there, I hope you will respond because this is the biggest game in town. And Georgia has gotten to the halfway point of the regular season. And 5-1 keeps them right in line for everything they want to be at the end of the season. And if you get past this big game, arguably the highest ranked team Georgia will still face in this second half of the regular season, then you better believe the path beyond that gets just a little bit clearer. Home field advantage matters. Georgia's overcome two raucous environments this season, barely winning at Tennessee, barely winning at Auburn, but pulling out the victory in the face of a crowd that was trying to do everything it could to make things tough on Georgia. Well, on Saturday, Georgia fans get the chance to respond in their own way. Kirby Smart that was the very first thing out of his press conference. The very first thing. Not talking about injuries, not talking about, personnel, not talking about play scheme, not that Smart wants to reveal all that anyway. The very first thing out of the box was, we need you. I love you. Appreciate you being at Auburn for those of you who are there, but we need you in full voice for the game against Ole Miss. My hope is Georgia fans are ready to respond to that. Given all of the attacks that Kirby Smart's faced this week, my guess is Georgia fans will be ready to do just that. And for what it's worth, I think Georgia will also be ready to respond as well. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Serve Pro. We're glad you're with us, whether it's live on video 10 a.m., on demand after that, radio noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. Appreciate you being a part of the program there. Podcast, Apple, Spotify, worldfamousdawgnation.com. However you check in on our show, we're just glad you do it. Happy to have you here as a part of it. Also appreciate our friends at Serve Pro who make it all possible too. I was talking to our friend Faraday this morning. She and some of the Serve Pro folks went to the Falcons game last night. By the way, shout out to the Falcons. Getting a win over the Buffalo Bills, Monday Night Football, that was a lot of fun. A lot of our Serve Pro folks were in the building last night to see that and enjoy that, and I'm happy they got the chance to do that. I also love what Serve Pro does for the community, too, because sometimes it's like a large-scale thing. We've actually had, thankfully, so far, kind of a quiet hurricane season here in the southeastern United States, which is a nice thing to know. But this is that time of year where weather-related catastrophes obviously happen, and oftentimes you see gigantic cleanup efforts that take place. In many communities, ServPro really leads the way on those cleanups. They'll bring the mobile command center out there. That's the giant truck, sort of looks like a NASCAR hauler. They run point on the entire thing from there. And on large-scale jobs like that, there's really nobody better than the restoration specialist of ServPro to get that done for you. But it's also true when it comes to your own house. I told you the other day, we almost had like a kitchen fire pop up out of nowhere. Thankfully, we didn't. But that stuff happens just like that, just super quick, can happen out of nowhere. Or honestly, a little roof incident or a water pipe burst or something like that. We had that at one of our older studios where just out of nowhere, something crazy happens. And when it does, creates a big mess. That's a stressful situation because let's face it, your home is not only a financial investment, but it's the emotional peace of mind that you have. Much of that comes from your connection to your home. And when that's damaged, you're off your axis. Well, ServPro can get it looking back for you like it never even happened. That's what they are all about. So find them online at servpro.com, SERV, servpro.com, SERV, servpro.com. Small scale job, larger scale, cleanup, anything in between. The restoration specialists of ServPro are ready to work for you and get it done for you looking like it never even happened. Also, each ServPro franchise, independently owned and operated. So one more time online, it is servpro.com. Okay, as I told you, great guest today, Jake Fromm. Before we're done, we'll get into what we saw from the Georgia offense against Auburn and what needs to happen for that group going forward. That all comes up with Jake. Also, the legendary former Georgia coach Mark Richt here in just a couple of minutes. We are thrilled to be a part of a big event with Coach Richt next week. And Coach Richt will also talk about a couple different things with us. A, his thoughts on the craziness from Saturday, and B, the continued success that Georgia's had against Auburn that Coach Richt himself really laid the foundation for with a lot of his wins against Auburn. That's a point of pride for me. You'll be happy to know that those are still very good memories for Coach Richt. In fact, I love this, and you'll hear this in a moment. We recorded this with yesterday. Coach Richt actually turns out to be not all that different from many of us in that, every now and then if I'm on the elliptical or just bored, I'll just fire up an old Georgia game on YouTube. I'll look for the highlights or look for stuff. Just fire that up and try to just try to go back and relive it. Well, guess what? I was happy to hear that Coach Richt does some of that same stuff too. So we'll give you that from him coming up in just a couple of moments. Prior to that, though, let's go around the Doghouse today, presented by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. So I told you a moment ago that Georgia is, 5-1, halfway point of the regular season. If you replicate that, you're 10-2. I would say that given the schedule that Georgia plays, you're back in the college football playoff and you got yourself a chance to go compete for a championship once again. I also told you yesterday that my personal fear as someone who watches this team closely is the ceiling for this team right now may be a little lower than we've gotten used to it being. Maybe it's not a national championship ceiling, at least at the moment. I'm also a big believer that strong opinions loosely held as that changes because of maybe how Georgia's play evolves. I'm happy to update my opinion on that too. It is interesting to note that Kirby Smart was asked yesterday, hey, where do you put yourself among the top tier of teams in the SEC, the elite contenders, if you will? Do you think your team deserves to be included in that group? This is the answer that Kirby Smart gave.
Kirby, halfway through the regular season, do you think Georgia is in the upper tier of SEC teams in a league that seems to have more parity?
Absolutely.
Can you how do you evaluate that?
I don't evaluate because I only evaluate the teams we play.
Yeah.
So I think we got a really good football team, and I think it shows every Saturday we go out and compete. I don't study the film of the ones we don't play, although most people you don't play, you get on crossover games. But I'm not in the process of evaluating. I'm evaluating us and Ole Miss right now.
So Kirby Smart says, I think we're a top-tier team. I think we're a good team and has a chance to compete. I would agree with that, of course, but it begs the question, if Georgia is good, what is the best thing about it? What is the thing that makes Georgia upper tier here right now? There are some things we might say that potentially hold Georgia back, but what is it that Georgia does that makes it upper tier, top tier, that gives it a chance to be elite by the time the season is done? And I think there is an example of an answer to that question that comes from the Georgia offensive line. Obviously, the Georgia offensive line has had some troubles this year. We don't dispute that. A lot of that has been made worse by injury. But how Georgia has responded to that adversity, I think also tells us a lot about that particular unit and how it also embodies what Georgia's about overall. This is a Georgia team that's far from perfect, but certainly very tough, both physically and mentally. Offensive line seems to demonstrate this. This is Kirby Smart again about that group and the fact that they've started so many different combinations, forced to because of injuries, and yet they still, including the game against Auburn, second half for sure, long drive, was it almost 9 minutes of game time chewed up by a touchdown drive? You don't do that if you're not tough, and you can't be tough in a situation like that if you don't have the guts to overcome some injuries. And Georgia has all of that in large supply. Kirby Smart again.
Well, we're blessed to have the two freshmen come along as fast as they did, because those two guys have helped us. Injuries happen. I don't know. I wasn't aware we had 6 different combinations, but it doesn't surprise me because it certainly feels that way. It feels even crazier in games because we're having to rotate guys in games, and it's not rotation based on stamina sometimes. It's just rotation based on an injury here, something there, and that makes it tough. But, look, I'm proud of their toughness and the way they play, and that drive they had to end the game shows something about their character and their ability to overcome and convert some third downs. But, look, we got to play better as a team, and that starts with what we do today, and that's really what we're worried about today.
So let me see if I can drill down on this point a little further. Kirby Smart says, yeah, I think we're still an upper-tier SEC team. Based on the fans that I'm talking to on a regular basis, there are some Georgia fans who are just not quite so sure. Not quite so sure that's true or not, and they cite legitimate concerns, we would say. But my point here is be willing to give them a chance. Be willing to give them a chance to grow into something that is better than what it currently looks like Georgia is. Because they are not perfect, and sometimes they're not very pretty. But as Kirby said, they are really tough. Think about Monroe Freeling, for instance. He's going to be an SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week this week. He could barely walk. I mean, this was a guy who was quite injured, so much so that it didn't practice last week very much. Ended up, or at least probably didn't practice very much. Ended up performing the way that he did on Saturday, really gutting it out. You can notice Georgia's blemishes, but notice this part of it too. If they are upper tier, it's their toughness that makes that so. And it's a guy like Monroe Freeling who probably demonstrates that on Saturday against Auburn as much as anybody could. Here's Kirby one more time.
Guts, toughness, grit. I mean, if you'd have told me after watching him Wednesday or whatever day it was, Thursday, when he just went out and tried to run and work out, I was questioning whether we should bring him on the trip. And he texted me and said, Coach, I'm going on this trip and I'm playing and I'm going to be ready. And just says a ton about his competitive character in a day and age that, some guys have to look out for themselves or whatever. He's all about the team. And he made it clear that he wanted to help this team win that game. And he played a huge role in the game, especially after the one ankle came, we had to start flip-flopping.
So, to be honest, as a fan, it's probably more fun to root for a flashy, exciting, a dominant team. Feels good to do that. Sometimes rooting for a tough, gritty, hard-fighting team doesn't quite feel as good because the games are close, makes you a little nervous. You're not quite so sure what you're going to get. The outcome's not guaranteed. But hopefully as we settle in here and hopefully as Georgia continues to put this on display, there'll be a greater appreciation for what they are doing to win the games, while we also have a fair hearing of what they've done in some of these games to make them more difficult. The fact that they still find a way, that deserves some consideration too. And when you think about how it was that Georgia got to win against Auburn on Saturday, a guy like Monroe Freeling should be getting a lot of credit. His return from injury made it possible. And his toughness in that game is an avatar for maybe what makes Georgia Georgia and what gives them a chance to thrive and prove that they really are in the top tier of the SEC before the 2025 season comes to an end. And that is Around the Doghouse, and it's poured today by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. Great time to go to the North Georgia mountains. Visit our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider and visit just Mercier Orchards. You can see the couple hundred acres, the apples, the other fruits that they grow there, the gorgeous terrain. I mean, just absolutely picturesque scenery all around that, and great tasting fruits. And if you can go and see it for yourself, I think you really should. But honestly, what's cool is the great taste of Mercier Orchards Hard Cider can be delivered right to you from your local supermarket, your beverage store, in some cases your favorite restaurant. And if you don't see it, we want you to ask for it, because honestly, we love supporting Georgia-grown companies, and it has been really fun to watch the way in which this company has already been embraced by so many folks in our audience, and we think they're there are many more who are going to love it and have a great experience. We're going to watch just a great success story unfold. Supporting those who are growing food right here in our great state, of course, we want to do that, especially when it's a really good tasting hard cider. That makes it doubly fun. So at your local supermarket or wherever you buy your beverages, maybe your favorite restaurant, ask for it on tap or ask for them to stock the cans. And I think they will. We've had great success with people asking for that. Enjoy yourself some Mercier Orchards hard cider. Best way to do this is to search for Mercier Orchards hard cider. You can find that there. You can also check out the website. Mercier is spelled Mercier, mercier-orchards.com/hard-cider. That's why I say just search it. Mercier Orchards hard cider. I promise you'll find it. Great to have Mercier Orchards, by the way, presenting Around the Doghouse and Mercier Orchards hard cider. Okay, before we're done, it's the terrific former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm. We'll dive in deep about what we did and didn't see from the Georgia offense on Saturday in the win against Auburn. But for now, big event coming up next week. Dawg Nation's thrilled to be a part of it. Let's talk to a guy who also had his fingerprints all over a lot of wins for Georgia against Auburn throughout the years. Mark Richt, here today on Dawg Nation Daily, presented by ServPro. And here on DawgNation Daily, it's a great pleasure to have the terrific former coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, now a part of a wonderful event, the third annual Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl, coming up in just a couple of weeks, and obviously raising a lot of money for Parkinson's disease research, Crohn's disease research. The legendary former coach of Georgia, Mark Richt, joining us here today on DawgNation Daily. Coach Richt, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the show, and really on behalf of everybody from Dawg Nation, thank you so much for the chance to be a part of the Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl once again here in 2025.
Yeah, we're excited about that. I appreciate being on the show, first of all, but also the fact that you guys are going to stream the event live. As you said, the Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl 2025. They'll start bowling somewhere around 6:30 or so.
That's exactly right. Coming up here on October 22nd. So as you said, even closer than I gave it credit for. We're right here on the doorstep of all of that. And I tell you, for me, Coach Rick, one of the things that's been so much fun last couple of years is to watch the way, in addition to all the money that gets raised for a great cause, which we'll obviously talk about, the way in which the Georgia players, for instance, I saw Warren Brinson the other day, obviously the former now Georgia player who was so great at this event. He was talking about, these current players better be happy to know he can't come back and win his title again. It seems like the players have gotten into it. Coach Smart always seems to have such a good time around the event. It has been so much fun to me in support of this great cause, how much the Georgia coaches, the Georgia players themselves seem to get behind all of this.
Yeah, well, it is a fun event. And one of the things that I love about it is once everybody gets in the building, the only goal at that point is fun. The money's been raised.
That's right.
Just a matter of fun and competing. And I've actually got a new championship belt I'm bringing out this year.
I love it.
I've got one for the player, the celebrity bowler, who has the highest single game point total. So whoever has the highest game will get a special championship WWE style belt from Trophy Smack. And we're fired up about that.
And obviously, it's also a chance for a lot of your former players to be there, guys that we know well, John Stinchcomb, David Green, David Pollock, Corey Phillips, Fred Munsmeyer, guys that have been around during your tenure at Georgia and obviously still feel very close affection to you. How much fun is that for you to be around guys that you coach, that watch these guys that played together, share that time together? How much of a fun experience is that for you?
Well, it's great. It's great to see your former players, period. But when you pick up the phone or text them and ask them, can they show up for this event? And really, they're there to be an ambassador for the program. They're there to say hello to people, take pictures, have fun. I'm really not asking them to do much of anything else. But if their calendar's clear, they're coming. It's good that they want to show the love to the old ball coach and come and help support this event.
And, of course, if you want to find out more about the third annual Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl, the website you can go to is ricksdawgbowl.com to give and to find out about all the work that's being done here by the Isaacson Center, and obviously 100% of the money that's raised goes towards that. And Coach Richt, if you don't mind, I know we've told this story now for a couple of years, but for people who are joining us maybe for the first time to hear this, acquainting themselves with this event, your personal tie, obviously
Right.
you're very courageous in your battle with Parkinson's disease. I know you got a granddaughter that's been battling and doing very well with in her battle with Crohn's disease. And the Isaacson Center and the neurological research that goes along there is working towards better treatment and eventually maybe even a cure. And obviously this money that's raised by the Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl goes a long way towards helping that. Obviously, University of Georgia, in many ways, leading the way on this. For those who maybe don't know as much about this, would you mind telling them a little bit more about that part of it?
Right. Well, Dr. Kanthasamy and his wife, Arthy, they kind of tag team Parkinson's and neurological disease in general, but Parkinson's in specific. And there's a huge tie between the gut biology and brain biology. So, Crohn's is a inflammatory bowel disease that our granddaughter Jaden has. So when I said we're going to raise some money for Parkinson's, my wife looks at me and says, "No, we're going to raise some money for Crohn's too." And so as it turned out, I started to talk to Dr. K about the connection between the two, and he's actually got a really nice video. I think if you go on ricksdawgbowl.com, you can see a nice video that kind of explains it in greater detail. But there is a connection between the gut biology and the brain. So both of these diseases are getting attacked, and to this point, we've already raised over $500,000 for this year's event.
That's right.
And in total, that puts us over $2 million over a 3-year period, plus whatever we get from people that are gracious enough to give online through that ricksdawgbowl.com link.
Yep.
So we're excited about that. We know the money's going to good use. And it's right here in town, and it is actually our own University of Georgia group that's benefiting from it.
Get the website once again, ricksdawgbowl.com. And as Coach Richt said, already surpassing $2 million in total giving over the course of the history of this event, going towards a goal for this year for the third annual Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl, $700,000, hoping to raise that here this year. We need your help to get there on that. So please go to ricksdawgbowl.com. You have your chance to give on that. And Coach Richt, obviously I can't pass the chance to talk a little bit of football with you. We saw Georgia win a wild game against Auburn this past weekend. As a coach yourself, you know what it's like to, go through all the pressure of close calls and weird moments. And hey, when you get out of it, you're just thankful to found a way to win. That's exactly what Georgia did on Saturday. What was it like watching that play out from your perspective?
Well, it's funny, I do the ACC network stuff, so it's my job to be watching the other games
Sure.
in the Atlantic Coast Conference. But it was a super light week for our league and for the ACC network. And so we had one of the TVs in our green room or whatever you want to call it on Georgia. So I'm mostly watching that game and trying to do my best to keep an eye on what's happening in the ACC. But what a wild game, and I missed a lot of it, crucial moments. But because there's I was on and off the air throughout that game. But when I went back and watched it, I'm like, oh my goodness, what a wild game, and what a tough game for the officials. I mean, it's hard as it is to do that job, but to have plays that close and that meaningful, it's unbelievable. And usually over the years when I used to raise hell about something with the officials, I'd look at the film the next day and realize they were right most of the time.
Sure.
But this one here, it's still debatable. Who got gypped the worst,
It's certainly a controversial night for sure. And I couldn't help but think about you. Obviously, Georgia got its 9th straight win against Auburn. And, when I look back on your career, Georgia, the great win in 2002 and many other wins against Auburn, which really flipped that rivalry from what had maybe been in previous years prior to that. I hope that you have as fond memories of those rivalry wins, great success against Georgia Tech, great success against Auburn, memorable wins against Florida. Your success against Georgia's rivals in that time, I think really laid a foundation foundation for what the program has obviously become now. I hope that your memories of those games are as fond as Georgia fans have, because when we look back on your time as Georgia coach, a lot of those are games that still get a lot of chatter among fans all the time. I hope the memories are as pleasant for you as they are for us.
They are. It's a lot of fun. And of course, with YouTube TV, you could just dial up any game you want. So a lot of times in the off season, I'm just chilling, spending time with the grandchildren and all that. But if I find some downtime every once in a while, I'll just turn on the 2002 Georgia Auburn game and
Me too.
watch Michael Johnson make that catch, and listen to Larry Munson go berserk. And
Oh, yeah.
that's part of it too. Just some of Larry's calls made our games even more memorable because of how he reacted to some of those wins. But the 2002 Auburn game, as bad as we were getting beat at halftime, or it seemed like we were, for us to come back in that one and win it in the dramatic fashion that we did was pretty spectacular, pretty fun.
No, I think that's incredible stuff. And obviously that day, Georgia wins the East for the very first time, goes on to win the first SEC championship in 20 years. And like I said, lays the foundation for what the rest of your career would become and what Georgia still is doing when it comes to football success. So, Coach, a lot of us have tremendous memories of all of that. It's great to hear you go back and retell a lot of those stories. And as we say goodbye to you today, I'll also say, it is an incredible privilege to be a part of the third annual Chick-fil-a Dawg Bowl coming up on October 22nd. I am so proud of watching the money that gets raised. Frankly, selfishly, I enjoy being in the room and watching everybody having fun on that night. It's just an awesome time for the UJ football community, and it's all for a great cause. Obviously, a lot of folks who care a lot about you and your family helping with a really ambitious goal here of $700,000 here this year, already surpassing $2 million in total in now going on 3 years of this event's existence. So once again, Coach, as we say goodbye to you, thank you for allowing DawgNation to be a part of this. Thank you for your courageous leadership in helping this money total be raised, and also for really modeling for all of us what it looks like to live a great life and obviously set a great example. So, Coach, we certainly appreciate that. Thank you for being with us here on DawgNation Daily today.
It's great to be on, and I appreciate you guys helping promote this event.
We will see you coming up on October 22nd.
Awesome.
What an outstanding privilege that is to be able to talk to the great former Georgia coach Mark Richt, and how lucky are we transitioning from one era of Georgia football to the other and one great guest to the next. From Coach Richt here to Jake Fromm as we get ready to do a Kroger Fresh Take today on DawgNation Daily. Jake, welcome to the show. And I guess as I'm saying hello to you, I'm curious. I know it's a different era for you. He was not the coach when you were there, but just in your time in Athens, have you had much interaction with Coach Richt throughout the years?
I don't know how I'm about to follow up Coach Richt here on the show. Hopefully I don't disappoint, but back and forth with Coach Richt, kind of through recruiting, and then through, now living in Athens and in Watkinsville, getting to see him work out a little bit at the D1 facility there in town. And Coach Richt is just a good man and a great example, and an excellent leader, and a man that I want to aspire to be one day.
1,000,000% agree on that. Truly an example for all of us to follow. What did you think about the Auburn game? About as crazy as game we've talked about. I think it takes several days to unpack everything that occurred. You've played in crazy games too. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, where to start? I think you got to say football is a game of inches. It was a tale of two halves, completely one-sided, one way or another. Georgia starts off slow yet again. I know they're not taking any pills or injecting anything, but man, we just kind of wish that they would find whatever that secret sauce is to start fast. We would love to see it, and not just find themselves into a hole. And they're a good football team. Coach Smart alluded to it in his post-game press conference, but they're not really built that way to come from behind, especially on offense. Like they are very methodical in how they operate on offense, and having to sustain drives. Now, man, that 16, 17 play drive where they ate up 8 minutes off the clock and scored a touchdown, like that is this Georgia football team this year, where they can eat it up and they can run the ball, they can be efficient in the passing game, and just be able to kind of take away a game and any hope from a team when they're up ahead later in games. But got to find a way to be more explosive, start better on defense and on offense. Man, the refs tried to steal the show there
Yeah.
for a little bit. It was kind of a sloppy football game. Really. Auburn played very undisciplined and they kind of gave it away and shot themselves in the foot, and Georgia capitalized on it. I think obviously the play of the game was the punch out fumble by CJ and Raylan Wilson there at the goal line. But I think the turning point in that game was the offense and this dip toe scenario of this 2-minute drill where they had a QB sneak to get out from the backed up situation and then popping off that run and then transitioning into their 2-minute offense and being to walk away with points.
Yeah.
It was a 10-point swing, should have been 17-0 Auburn, ended up being 10-3 at halftime. And man, Auburn after that just didn't have any answers. It sucked the life out of that stadium. And man, kind of the rest is history.
So you mentioned what Kirby Smart said post-game on Saturday, and we always say that the Kirby post-game is very different than the weekly press conference because it's more unfiltered. Anybody that's competed is going to have a certain emotion after that. And so you get stuff that from Kirby there that's a little different than you get from them during the week. And he just sort of shot from the hip on Saturday. It's like, people want us to be explosive. That's not what we are offensively. Given a chance to, I think, filter his words maybe a little bit differently on Monday is like, we do need to be explosive. Explosives are obviously going to determine, success as much as almost anything else will, including turnovers. So from that standpoint, Jake, as someone who understands game planning and how to play the quarterback position, everything else, if Georgia needs a little bit more in the way of explosive plays to be what they can be offensively, how do you think they get that, and where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I just think their playmakers have to get their touches. I think it's only a matter of time when these certain players get their touches that they'll break one off. Obviously, number one being Zachariah Branch, Colby Young. He's doing a great job of catching these intermediate balls and then breaking tackles and then, getting these chunk plays and the explosives. It was good to see Noah Thomas get involved with his deep over route and his explosive catch. And then have to find a way to get Dylan Bell involved, man, through the highs and the lows of his career and in his season. But man, he is a good football player, and you have to find a way to get his skill set touches and get him the ball in some way, shape, or form. And whatever the running back room committee looks like, we didn't get to see that much of Chauncey Bowens in this game, but have to find a runner that is able to just break a tackle and take it to the next level. So, it's a little bit on Gunner, but I think it's all about kind of how Bobo sees it and game planning and getting specific guys certain touches in the game. But you can't really. I have no complaints from Bobo in the way he's dialing it up, because I think he is calling an excellent game so far in this season, and he's doing an excellent job.
Speaking of Gunner, I thought that the former Georgia quarterback Aaron Murray said something interesting the other day about what he thought were struggles from Gunner, as he described as layering his throws. And he said because that he's having, according to Aaron's telling of this, difficulty layering his throws, it's making it difficult to connect with receivers in the middle of the field. As someone who is a quarterback yourself, what do you think about that analysis from Aaron?
Yeah, I think he's alluding to a lot of those seam routes that we saw Gunner try to fit the ball to the tight ends and Oscar. And with those particular balls, it's Coach Dorsey there at the Bills, kind of say, hey, we want arc, but with pace. And that's layering the football. That's over one and under two, as they would say, over the linebackers and under the safeties. And I think it's a rep thing. It's a timing thing. I think you don't want to hit those guys too far down the field, because then that's when the safeties blow somebody up and you send somebody to the hospital, and you don't want to hit them too early, because that's when the linebackers have a chance to tip the ball. And, that happened there in the game. But I think that's something that Gunner is working on and doing a better job of. And for me, for whatever reason, I always felt there was some more space in the middle of the field in the NFL than I did in college. For whatever reason, that referee's standing right there and just feels like he's clogging up the field. In the NFL, he's not there. And the offensive line there at Georgia is humongous. It is tough to see over that offensive line at times, and I just think it's a work thing, it's a rep thing. But the middle field is a great spot to expose some defenses, especially like Auburn was doing. Man, they were bringing a ton of pressure, went cover zero multiple times. And Gunner definitely felt it this game, and I know he woke up sore on Sunday morning.
Got one more question I want to ask for Jake Fromm here in a moment, but prior to that, I want to make a big announcement here. We're lucky enough here as a part of this Kroger Fresh Take with Jake Fromm each week on DawgNation Daily. Speaking of our friends at Kroger, we've got a big event coming up on Friday. We're going to broadcast DawgNation Daily live on Friday from a brand new Kroger. It's the Brazelton location right there in Houston. You know, if you're in that area, you know it's like Houston, Brazelton. It's all basically the same thing. So let me give you the address. It's 175 Peachtree Exchange Boulevard in Houston, the brand new Kroger Marketplace. It's a gorgeous location right there. And we're going to be lucky enough to have at Kroger on Friday, our friends from Dr. Pepper are bringing the College Football Playoff National Championship Trophy. So if you've ever seen the trophy, Georgia's lucky enough to win a couple of these. You want to get your picture taken with it in celebration of Georgia's success. You just want to see it. It's kind of a cool thing to be able to see. Or if you just like to hang out with me, I'll be there. We're going to do DawgNation Daily this Friday live from the brand new Kroger Marketplace in the Brazelton, Houston area. It's 175 Peachtree Exchange Boulevard, Houston, Georgia. Terrific location. It's an awesome place, and we'd love to have you there. Come out and see, courtesy of Dr. Pepper, the College Football Playoff National Championship on Friday. That's going to be a lot of fun. Hope to see you there. And boy, hopefully Georgia gets back in that national championship race again this year too. And speaking of that, Jake, obviously the win against Ole Miss, if Georgia can get it, would go a long way towards getting there. It's Lane Kiffin, though, standing in Georgia's way. As somebody who knows offense, who knows the quarterback position, what do you think of Lane? Obviously, he's found an interesting quarterback this year. You know, Austin Simmons gets hurt. They pulled Trinidad Hubbard out of nowhere. It's amazing, and Kirby Smart even gave credit for that yesterday. Offense, probably less big names this year than maybe they had a year ago, but they're still humming along pretty good here. Using the portal pretty well in some cases. What do you think of Lane Kiffin as he moves into more of a veteran stage of his coaching career? Not quite the young guy as much anymore. Number 5 team in the country. What do you think of Lane?
Yeah, you look at a guy who is just absolutely developed as a coach. I mean, as a head coach, and being able to basically start at the top, kind of come down to rock bottom, and then work his way back up. And he's done an excellent job of building a very good program there at Ole Miss. And, you know, he doesn't have his starting quarterback this season. He continues to find excellent quarterbacks and develop them year in and year out. And they keep finding a way, man, to have a good football team and stay in the hunt there. This is a big year for them. Can they get over that hump? Can they get into the college football playoff and make a run at this thing? They have an excellent football team. They kind of slayed that dragon and that beast by beating Georgia last year. And they kind of want to double up on that this year. And I think they're a really good football team. Coach Kiffin is a great coach, and he has definitely tweaked his coaching style and done an excellent job there at Ole Miss.
So Mark Woodmansee and our producer Jay Black have pointed out, I said Trinidad Hubbard, the obscure former Major League Baseball player. It's Trinidad Chambliss, who is the Ole Miss quarterback. Yeah. So, Jake, listen, at any point in time, I'm always a threat to botch a name, but I won't get your name wrong. Jake Fromm, thank you so much for being with us on the show today as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take. Appreciate that, and we hope that we get the chance to catch up with you again very soon.
Brandon, thank you, man. Always. See you next week.
Yes, sir.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
I've told y'all before that my goal is to do this show into my 80s, God willing, in good health. Hope to be around that long, and hope my voice, by the way, holds out. I talk a big game about doing this show for another 4, decades, 5 decades, whatever. In a given day, just getting the voice to work to do the show has proven to be a little bit of a challenge. So we'll see what it's like over the course of the next 40 years. But the point is if I do the show for another 4 decades, I'm not going to know anybody's name. I'm going to be on here. I mean, I'm getting the Ole Miss quarterback's name wrong right now. I'm not going to know anyone's name. And it's going to be much like our YouTube chatters and our producer. It's the very light touch of, psh, BA, it's Trinidad Chambliss, not Hubbard. That's a weird ex-major leaguer. Which, by the way, a great game last night, speaking of the Dodgers, against the Milwaukee Brewers. But the point is, I will not know anyone's name. Before we get rolling with our SEC through, I also want to give a shout out here. We've been reminding you of this a lot lately. It's important that you're aware of this. And we got a big non-conference game coming up for Georgia before this season comes to a close. In fact, on the final day of the regular season, it's Black Friday afternoon, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Now, we've seen a big win against Clemson a couple years ago, Oregon. Georgia's had some big moments in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but now it gets a chance to beat its in-state rival, Georgia Tech. This year, the game, which we typically think of as clean old-fashioned hate, going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Going to be a great experience, and we think it's an awesome opportunity for Georgia fans to be there. If Tech wants to play their home game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we say more power to them, because it just creates an opportunity for Georgia fans to load up on these tickets, and that's my hope, that right now you are doing just that. So please check out mercedes-benzstadium.com/events for more on that. mercedes-benzstadium.com/events. I hope you'll be there Black Friday afternoon. We think it can be a great chance for Georgia to have a great home field advantage in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We've seen Georgia fans take this place over many times before. We think they'll do it again. We want you to be there for it. One more time, it's mercedes-benzstadium.com/events for more on that. All right. SEC through here. Let's get ready to talk about a couple of the big games in this past weekend. We really haven't done a ton of that yet, so let's do that. Alabama beats Missouri, and listen, I think right now Alabama has the look of one of the top-tier teams in the country, and Ty Simpson might be the deserving winner of this year's Heisman Trophy. There's a lot you can say about Alabama right now. I don't say it with joy and pleasure, but I'm also not in the habit of being dishonest. You'll acknowledge that. And yet, as much as I give Bama the credits deserved, I find myself for a second consecutive week saying I'm actually more impressed with the team that Alabama played than Alabama itself. Not because I don't give Alabama the credit. I think Alabama's very good right now. But 2 weeks ago, I came away from the Vanderbilt game thinking, boy, Vandy's going to hang around all year long. They host LSU this week, for instance, your favorite, but believe it or not, against LSU. And same thing after Saturday, where Missouri's team we were high on at the beginning of the season. We said, though, you don't have to beat Alabama to be better than expectations. But they gave themselves a chance to. And one thing you're going to notice, and you can't help it, as I said before, we try to be in the habit of being as honest as we can. Missouri's pass rush, getting after Ty Simpson, much more successful. Similar situation, home game for Missouri, home game for Georgia. And Missouri's pass rush just much more successful getting after Ty Simpson, giving them a chance to be competitive in that game. They just were better at that than Georgia was. And the former Georgia player, Damon Wilson, was obviously one of the contributors to that. So a couple of things here. A, puts the spotlight on where Georgia needs to be better. That's certainly an area in which it does. And also, what the upper tier of the SEC is, we're still figuring that out. The unprecedented depth of the SEC, though, the number of quality teams this league possesses, right now that cannot be ignored. All right, a couple of other comments here for a moment. Outside of the SEC, Ohio State right now probably looks like the best team in America. It's quiet. They're not getting a ton of attention necessarily, but they're winning thoroughly each week. They handled Illinois pretty easy on Saturday. Credit goes to them for that. We're going to talk later on this week about Ole Miss's close call against Washington State, what the significant takeaway from that game is. We'll probably save that for a different topic. Another team you've got to, in my case, begrudgingly give credit to, Indiana beating Oregon on the road. You could legitimately say that right now Indiana may be better this year than it was a year ago. Fernando Mendoza is certainly a better quarterback than the Hoosiers had a year ago. And Kirk Cignetti, as distasteful as I find some of his behavior to be, undoubtedly has become an impact coach. We told you yesterday that a good coach, a great coach, if you will, is worth multiples of whatever you're paying him. Indiana's already paying Kirk Cignetti a lot, but he's worth maybe 10 times that because of the way in which he's transformed an Indiana program that's a total stranger to football success. But right now, they look like one of the small handful of best teams in the country. I don't believe they'll win the national championship. I believe that, I am who I am. So, of course, I'm going to continue to assume that they'll probably eventually be exposed. But you got to give them credit right now. They are not getting exposed. They blasted Illinois, won at Oregon. They're winning with ease right now. It is very impressive stuff. A&M is also impressive. We told you that Billy Napier would be right back on the hot seat again shortly after the Texas game. That's pretty much true. But on the flip side of that, if you're trying to discuss who the best team in the SEC is right now, it might be Alabama, but it's probably safer to say that's A&M at the moment. Can they remain that way? Well, that remains to be seen. But boy, this Texas A&M team looks really, really good here right now. LSU beat South Carolina. I didn't see much of this because it was ongoing with the Georgia game, so I don't have too much to say about it. It seems like South Carolina had their opportunities, just couldn't quite take advantage. That's something those fans in that program know very well. But nonetheless, busy week in week 7, setting up for a big weekend here coming up, and we'll preview a lot of that with you tomorrow. For now, though, we'll call that our SEC through. Can I also do one more thing here before we say goodbye here today, if we possibly can? A lot of you, I was noticing the chat a little earlier, you were kind of say, I've got a brand new shirt on today, so I wanted to say shout out to all of you who've noticed that. I tell you, an apparel maker I've become a big fan of lately is Johnny O. This is a Johnny O shirt. I like how the collar works here, where they have the buttons designed in such a way that you can have the collar open without it being too open. It's one of those things. It also fits good for me, which is not always an easy thing for me to pull off, but fits good, looks good. It's my favorite of the alternate UGA logos. So for those of you who noticed the new shirt today, I wanted to just say thank you for that. Yeah, Johnny O. I'm a big fan of this brand right now, and so for those of you who noticed it, I certainly appreciate it. And as we say goodbye here today, want to do so with a golden shoe. And this was sent to me, and I got to admit, I'm pretty jealous of this. I wish I would have thought of this myself. Very clever. You may remember way back, 2013, the improbable Auburn win over Georgia became known as the prayer at Jordan-Hare. Well, Jay on X, JL, let me find out, wrote into me to share this from Lisa Duke. I guess Lisa wrote this. This is very funny. Lisa said, they had the prayer in Jordan-Hare. Now we have the crumble after the fumble. #Go Dogs. Lisa, that is brilliant. You are obviously a genius. Very well done. It was right there for anybody to come up with, and you nailed it. I'm jealous of you. I wish I would have done that myself. Incredible nickname for this game. The crumble after the fumble, because certainly Auburn fell apart. I appreciate JL at Let Me Find Out on X for sharing that with me. From Lisa, we'll give you both golden shoes for that. Lousy, stinking Gators. Been 1,802 days since they've beaten the Georgia Bulldogs. A couple of weeks, we think that number's going to keep on going up. Another rival the Dogs will be looking to take down. We love all of that. Glad to have you with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. We will look forward to talking to you then. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, when you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs, they show up on time. They do the work that's promised. The price is promised. You can trust them on all that. So yesterday, we went very, very long. I have a personal appointment I have to take care of today, so I cannot go quite as long today. But we are going to do a few comments. RT says Johnny O also makes the really nice quarter zip pullovers. First of all, I'm a very big fan of quarter zip pullovers. I've told you before, instead of a pullover, it ought to be a put together, because it just makes you look more put together. Listen, I need all the help I can get to look put together, but you throw a nice quarter zip on top of anything and you just look more put together. So indeed, that's the case, and Johnny O does make a great one. In fact, you may see a Johnny O quarter zip coming up very soon. Frank Patterson, by the way, good to see Frankie today, says Sports Illustrated used to poll coaches nationwide and ask, who would you want your son to play for? And nobody in that poll won more often than Coach Richt did. Truly a man of God. Yeah, I'm a very big fan of Coach Richt as a football coach, but I also find him, as Jake Fromm was saying, I find him to be a tremendous inspiration. It is not easy to lead well. Lead yourself well, lead others well. It's not easy to finish a career strong. Not easy to do, to run the race well. But boy, I tell you, Coach Richt, as he's moved into the retirement phase of his life, still on TV, so still working, of course. But boy, what an example of somebody who, from beginning of career all the way through his final game, just led the way you're supposed to lead, demonstrating the kind of character you're supposed to put on display. And honestly, I am really inspired to try to do as much of that as I possibly can too. No, don't come anywhere near as close, and we'll never pretend that I do. I do not personally come close to having the same thing necessarily said about me. But boy, I continue to use Coach Richt as an inspiration, as so many folks who've been connected to him do. That is 1,000,000% true. Georgia on Tap also likes Nightmare at Jordan-Hare. Yeah, I kind of like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Tyler Puglisi says, I think an underrated player that came up huge again was London Humphreys. 2 or 3 huge catches on third down. He's proven to be clutch at the ends of games. Yeah, he really has. I like London a lot. I agree with you, Tyler. I like London a lot. Yeah, Taylor Russell says he's the kind of Coach Richt's the kind of man who makes you want to believe in religion. Well, as I said, y'all know that my faith is important to me. I don't try to beat you over the head with it here, but it is important to me. I just would say in life, just notice what works for people. Notice what works for people. Choices, decisions, philosophies. Notice what works for people. That's an interesting thing to pay attention to. Let us see what else. Dean Ellie says, how does Monroe Freeling heal when we need him in every SEC game? He says there's no locked-in wins on the schedule. We don't have the luxury of playing Rutgers or Purdue. Yeah, I said this a little earlier that you'd like to have a dominant team, a tough team that doesn't quit. Is a little bit more stressful because by definition that means the games are a little closer. That means that that you don't really know the outcome. And while Georgia could win every game it plays the rest of the regular season, almost all of these have some element. Even Mississippi State on the road, certainly Saturday against Ole Miss. Florida's playing a little bit better. Their defense is really good. Almost every game that Georgia will play for the rest of the season is also losable too. So just be ready to be white-knuckled. And listen, ultimately I love that feeling. I love feeling like what we're watching matters. And that's what we got from the Georgia-Auburn game on Saturday. It's like, this may not go Georgia's way. It's going to be heartbreaking if Georgia loses. At one point in time, it was going to be frustrating and angry, make you angry the way that Georgia was playing. But boy, it matters to us, and it's fun that it does. Let's see if I can get the. Hold on one second. It's fun that it does, but it makes everything just really. Pressure packed, right? And every game that Georgia has coming up, as you said, going to be very, very pressure packed. Let me see if I can get some DawgNation.com comments. And while I'm pulling those up, I'll also, as the commenter also mentioned, when it comes to Monroe Freeling, we talked about this during the show itself. Do not lose sight of the toughness that he shows getting back in the game. Or playing the game, being there for Georgia game like this, when you would assume that maybe didn't practice very much, banged up. That takes a lot. Randy Hall says, does Brent Key go to Penn State? I don't know. I would imagine that Brent Key, given the success that he's had, is going to have some job opportunities. Like the one thing that we will keep in mind from college football's past is, when Rich Rodriguez was a hot commodity at West Virginia, he got the chance to leave his alma mater and took the Michigan job. So if the job is, almost took Alabama, whatever happened there, did take the Michigan job, leaving his alma mater to do so. So, sometimes the guy does leave. If the resources are better, if the opportunity is greater, sometimes you do leave. So just because Key is a Tech alumnus, I don't think would guarantee that he'd stay there. I don't know that he's done enough yet to be the top of the Penn State coaching list, if I had to guess, especially if he's not bringing Buster Faulkner with him, which he almost certainly would not be. So, yeah, I mean, listen, we love coaching searches around here. We think they're really fun, and there are going to be some juicy rumors connected to this Penn State job for sure. Ken Holcomb says, does anybody know why people pronounce it Jordan hair when it's obviously Jordan hair? So here's what I can tell you, and I don't like to admit this necessarily because it ties me into company I don't want to be involved with, but on my dad's mom's side, this would be my maternal grandmother, in her family, she had people with that last name, and they did pronounce their last name Jordan. There are a lot of Southern things like this where, well, how come it's, we were talking before about Houston. Why is it Houston and not Hoshton? I don't know. Why is it Dacula and not Dacula? Why is it Dahlonega and not Dahlonega? Like, there's all these examples of why is it a more conventional pronunciation, and the answer always traces back to, I don't really know. But I can tell you that on my maternal grandmother's side, like, was that her? Maybe that was her maiden. Like, I'm ashamed I don't remember that. But she definitely on her family side, they were the Jordans, Jordan, the Jordans. In fact, my grandmother, when I was a little boy, when she was talking about the now GOAT, then he was just a player, the Chicago Bulls shooting guard, she would call him Mike Jordan. That's what my grandmother would sometimes call Michael Jordan. She called him Mike Jordan. That's a true story. So I don't know why Shug Jordan is Shug Jordan, but he was. And in my family, we did have Jordans. And like I said, I don't consider myself to be related to anybody connected to Auburn. I certainly hope I'm not. But we did have Jordans in our family. By the way, Rambo also asking about, listen, football is not static, right? Things are always changing. And Monroe Freeling was getting some criticism after the Notre Dame game. That is certainly true. But we also believe that he had a chance to bounce back from that. I can tell you from people who were in the locker room with Georgia that night that Freeling was, of course, just so angry at himself for how he played. When a guy doesn't play well, he knows he didn't play well, and nobody's more eager to correct that record than he would be. And we think that Freeling was going to have a great chance to do that, and he's done exactly that. So that's 100% true. So SEM Dog says that Shug Jordan's name, by the way, we have so many smart people in our audience. He says that the Jordan family has said that pronunciation comes from a Welsh background, which makes some sense, right? I always think of Wales as sort of the south of England, even though it's not necessarily south. I think of Wales as the south of the UK. They have their own language. We have our own vernacular. I would say there's probably some strong commonalities between the Welsh and Southerners. We're probably more of the Norman British variety down here, but nonetheless. Probably more. Let us get a couple more. So Randy Hall says his and his wife are going to be in AHN. Randy, is that Athens? Airport abbreviations better than I do. George Hunter says it depends on what part of Georgia you're in. That's certainly true. This is on Facebook, by the way. Miriam Corbin's going to be there screaming her lungs out on Saturday. That means she's going to sound like me when it's all said and done. George Hunter also says, keep punching that ball out for the Georgia defense. Yeah, I told y'all yesterday. Listen, I don't mind being honest. When I heard that Georgia was spending so much time at practice trying to punch out footballs, in my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, is this how bad it's gotten that they're reduced to this, what I, in my, feeble mind, thought was just a gimmick? And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, they saved the whole season by punching out a football? Shows what I know. Shows what I know. Luke Howe, I didn't know this. This is amazing. That Shug Jordan coached basketball at Georgia. I didn't know that. That's an interesting tie-in. Did not know that. That's really interesting. Did not know that. Rambo says Welsh pronunciations are nuts. They also have their own, there's a completely different language that Welsh, I don't know if they still speak it, but in previous eras, ancient times maybe, they spoke a completely different language. Not like an accent, but like a completely different language, like totally different words, right? UJ Marine says, Dog Nation, smart people in the audience. War Eagle Nation, no smart people in the audience. Yeah, that's probably true. And plus, I need as many smart people in the audience as I can to make up for my cognitive deficiencies. Ken Holcomb says, he's also Southern, but never heard it pronounced that way. But Ken, you're like Southern aristocracy. You're like, You come from like noble lineage. Some of us are like, like Southern. Of course, I'm kidding. But seriously, like that really was, the way my, grandmother's family pronounced it. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, Senior Dog 54. The difference between like say Houston County and Houston, the town. That's right, town in obviously Texas. All right, we have got to go, y'all. I'm sorry, I've got to bounce out of here quick today. Let me do a couple more YouTubes. We'll get out. Frank Patterson pointing out that Auburn's field's named after a Georgia grad. Georgia's field is named after an Auburn grad. Yeah, for a long time, these two programs, which are geographically very close to each other, had a lot of close ties. I don't know that the people have pointed this out a lot. I'm far from the first one to say it, that the old feuding cousins description that Vince Dooley once gave the rivalry, I don't quite know that it's quite as genteel as it once was. Maybe society overall is not quite as genteel. George on Tap says, y'all know the English town. So I believe I do know how to pronounce this. It's Leicester, right? Am I right about that, George on Tap? It's Leicester, right? And I think the reason why I know this, and you may be laughing at me for being horribly wrong, but didn't Leicester win the Premier League a few years ago in like a shocking fashion? I think that's how I learned.
You are correct.
Oh, look at that. See, I'm not as dumb as some of y'all thought I was. I've been given the green light from Jay Black that I, A, got the pronunciation right. It is Leicester. And B, they won the Premier League a couple of years ago. I'm not as dumb as some of y'all thought I was.
The internet also tells me that people in Wales still speak Welsh.
They still speak a different language?
Half the population says they are fluent in Welsh.
That's amazing. Well, so if you go to the grocery store, are you ordering are you like, are you speaking, like it's one thing to be fluent and it's another thing to like actually like use the language. I guess you're not going to get that.
I spent 2 seconds Googling this.
No, I get it. I totally get it. Jerry Dog fan says that Nate Frazier may get better because he obviously had a couple of fumbles. Maybe he gets better at holding on to it because Georgia trying to punch it out. Boy, it's funny. You give C.J. Allen permission to punch something. He seems like he'd really enjoy that. He's like, hey, we need you to punch. And C.J. Allen, punch what? You punch these footballs out. And he's been doing it ever since then. Kentucky, Auburn. He seems like he strikes me as the kind of person that, given permission to do some punching, seems pretty happy to do so. All right. Yeah, so Mark Wibensey also pointing out that, there's also the Gaelic language in Ireland, which is a good point. That's a good point. All right, we got to go for now. Y'all, thanks for being here. Mudcat Jones also pointing out that Joel Eves, former Georgia AD, also came from Auburn. Yeah, so, I mean, listen, the people in Auburn will tell you that they are Atlanta's other SEC program, that both schools, they will say, are equal distance from the Atlanta airport. You can judge for yourself how true that is. So there you go. By the way, our guy Tyrone Brown reminding us that Connor picked Penn State to win the national championship. That is a tough scene. But we, of course, love Connor. All right, we have got to go. Y'all check out RS Andrews online, rsandrews.com. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price promised. That means plumbing emergencies. And by the way, a lot of times it's like little things for your plumbing stuff. You get sinks are draining slow, which can be a problem over time, or just little things like that. Checking filtration, how all that's working. You can have RS Andrews kind of come out and do a small number of little things for you too, a handful of those type of things. They really are a great plumbing resource because story after story, they've been delivering smiles. That's what RS Andrews is all about. So find them online, rsandrews.com. And of course, we'll see you tomorrow for Go With The Flow, presented by RS Andrews, as we talk about the big games for the upcoming weekend, including Georgia against Ole Miss. So that's tomorrow. For now, thanks for being here for our RS Andrews Cool Down, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. We'll look forward to talking to you then.